Science reconstructs a Raph. Here's your look at the new NECA toys, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Universal Monsters. Raphael as Frankenstein's monster. This spooky season, NECA is thrilled and chilled to announce a turtle-tacular new crossover line of 7-inch scale action figures, Universal Monsters and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The line will pay tribute to the world's most famous turtles and Universal's icons of horror, inspired by silver screen classic Frankenstein, celebrating its 90th anniversary in 2021. Raphael as Frankenstein's monster reimagines the temperamental turtle as the misunderstood monster, includes metal chain, interchangeable hands, and 2 lightning bolt sai. Before we get a closer look at Raph, the horror in a half shell, how about the first thing we actually do is figure out how tall the figure stands. While I'm doing this as well, I'd like to thank the folks over at NECA Toys that did provide this sample of Raphael as Frankenstein's monster that we could have a look at in this review. The figure stands 7¼ inches in height, or about 19 centimeters tall. For your size comparison, even though it's not technically Raphael, no, we can at least bring in a turtle so you can see the size and scale. Michelangelo, in this case, only goes to about the elbow of Raphael as Frankenstein's monster, so they're going to be quite considerably taller than your traditional Ninja Turtle figures. We can also bring in, of course, we'd have to bring him in, Frankenstein's monster, an equally awesome figure that NECA Toys did produce, one of many of their new Universal monsters, and it's nice to see on either side of them sandwiching together a turtle on one and a Universal monster on the other. How you squish the two together, do you get a pretty cool looking figure as a resulting of it. Breaking down the accessories to come include with the figure, Raphael comes included with 3 pairs of interchangeable hands, as well as lightning sai. Yes, you heard that correctly. Lightning sai. Let's have a look at those things first. I would certainly love to see these in 1:1 scale. Just the idea of taking a sai and turning them into electrical conduits, I think are a really interesting idea from NECA. Both of the sais not only have been painted in silver, but you may also be able to see as well that they've brushed on additional rusting. I really think that's a nice touch. 1:1 scale of these. Somebody please make them. The sais themselves do fit into her hands, into Raph's hands, although they didn't fit into the hands that came included with the figure when you immediately get him out of the box. Put the sai down for a second. The figure comes with these sort of lumbering hands that if you wanted to have arms up like you traditionally think of for Frankenstein, you could pull that off with sort of these pair of mutant elongated hands that of course do well to just sort of again walking across. They don't actually hold the sai, which will involve you having to change the size out, change the hands out in order to hold the weapons. As you can see, it just sits way too loose. The figure also comes included with a pair of closed fists. Again, not really the best thing to be holding the sai, but of course the next things we're about to have a look at are the ones for the job. First, before that though, I want to show you guys the detail work on just the hands alone. See the nice little texturing that they've added to the surface of Raph's skin? Not to mention all the little cuts and stitches and all the things that would have stitched up and made Frankenstein's monster Raph. Really like the look of all these hands. Of course, the hands I didn't end up having to change out when taking the figure out of his plastic prison were these hands right here. These, yes, are the hands for the doing the job of holding the sai. Now, the sais themselves, sai, singular. We don't pluralize sai. You do actually have to pry the fingers away from the palm to get the sai properly in there. You can go the route, of course, of heating the hands in hot water, or you can, of course, take a hairdryer, run a few passes on that. I've already done that prior to the review starting, but unfortunately the plastic has now started to cool, so you may want to do this a couple of times already. Once it's far enough in there, you can kind of also run the handle, see, against parallel to the thumb, and sort of just twist the sai in that way. And that does the job as well. I would certainly, though, encourage picking this figure up for yourself first of all. Really highly recommend picking this figure up. Yeah, just heat the hands first. Don't try to force the sai in there. Again, you can do the exact same thing on this side as well. Now, for these sai, the sai also can be technically stored. Let me just first of all twist these out. Just twist them against the thumb. There we go. And easily remove them. The sai can technically be stored on the figure, both on the back and as well the front. See this chain that runs around the kind of the outer parameter of his body? It's luckily kind of contained in here, so that sort of prevents, first of all, the chains from falling off his body altogether. But there's easily enough clearance where you can take then the lightning bolt side and slide them either to the back, if you'd like to display them that way, or most of the times when Raphael is displaying his sides, usually from the front. So you can also do that as well. Spin the figure around. And there's these little loops here also that you can do as well. But the thing about the loops is that it's really tight quarters. So you can either decide for yourself to run it through the chain, which is actually more the route I think I'm going to be going, just because it's a little bit easier, I find, to take the sai and feed it. Providing you don't get it, now that's one problem. You're going to also be feeding this through and getting it likely caught in the links of the chain. But you can either feed them through the actual chains. I'm going to do it on both the sides right now, like that. Or again, NECA has technically put in these little loops. See on the bottoms of his jacket. Again, the only problem with it, though, is it's really tight quarters. See how close that blade is to the top of that loop? So again, when you're feeding it through, first of all, you want to make sure that the chains are completely out of the way when doing it. And just when you're feeding it through, just be careful. Just slowly wiggle it down. You don't have to necessarily wiggle, but you will want to certainly wiggle down the sai. This is really where they belong. But again, you're going to want to be very careful when you're feeding those through. Let's go ahead and just take those out for the time being. Wiggle those out and put those to the side. And yeah, if you did want to change out his hands, by the way, they are pretty easy to do. You just hold on to the forearm and just twist until finally the wrists free themselves. And then we're just going to replace it with these hands here. I'm not really sure, to be honest, how I want to display Raphael. I kind of like the idea of at least having one of his hands sort of like this and maybe the other hand poised to have him displayed with the side. Did you just say poised? I did think I did. I did say poised, didn't I? I kind of like the look of having kind of two different hands used for Raphael here. Getting, though, a closer look at Raphael's head sculpt. I don't want to say it's a thing of beauty, because certainly you would not usually be using that word to be describing Frankenstein's monster. But I gotta say, like, the figure is fantastic. Incorporating the idea of both a Ninja Turtle and a Universal monster together, I think it's a happy marriage to have the two properties coming together like this. Initially, I have to admit, I was a bit perplexed that they chose Raphael for Frankenstein's monster and not maybe the obvious of Donatello, because I would have thought Donatello would have fit the profile of Frankenstein's monster just a little bit more. But the more, though, now I'm thinking about it, Donatello is more the science genius. I would expect, if anything, he would be Frankenstein, Victor Frankenstein, and not necessarily the monster. So immediately then you think, well, who's the more brooding of the turtles that could be a slow-moving Frankenstein? Raphael probably would have been the best fit for that. So yeah, initially thinking that Donatello would have been the better pick. I now realize maybe Raphael was the better solution to go with when it comes to Frankenstein's monster. The head sculpt, like I said, is fantastic. They have, though, even though it's really a red bandana, they have definitely darkened the color of the bandana to sort of fall to the kind of parameters of a very dark, dingy-looking costuming. So I really like that they've got, first of all, a really dark burgundy color for Raphael's bandana. You can see sort of a lazy-looking set of eyes that Raphael has as he's staring right back at you. And little touches to detail that I like is, of course, the little staples along the top, little stitches even on the top of his bandana, and he's also got it down below on the bottom of his chin, too. I love that they also have gone in there and dingied the teeth. They've discolored the teeth nicely, adding a little wash of brown. It's all those little extra layers of paint that really does make this figure stand out, even though he really doesn't have a lot of dark colors going for him. As for the outfit itself, he, of course, has the wider shoulder pad jacket that Frankenstein would known to have in the actual movie. He has the little bolts on the side. One interesting touch to detail is they actually have one of the bolts feeding a wire all the way to the back of his shell. And not only is there a lot of stuff going on here, the shell is quite busy. But what's interesting, though, is they actually have one of the connecting plugs going to this back readout display. Not only is it dark, it's dingy. It also looks like it's got some dust settled on it. I don't know if you can actually see it as I have it tilted towards the light. They've run a crack along the top, I guess, of the lens, the actual glass part, the little readout display. That is so cool, the fact that they would have done that. Of course, down below, they've got the little bolted on part that holds all the chain in place. The chain itself is plastic and each individually linked, so it does have an actual functioning service for it. One thing I also do like is that they did put part of the New York sewer city cover although you can only see really why sewer. It's kind of nice the fact that they've actually plated that onto the side. And even like if you look at the side of his shell, this one side is smoother. This one other side sort of sinks in slightly. And even the way that they've actually bolted the back of this on has left cracks sort of in its wake. Just little touches of detail like that I really think is super cool. Even though he is really technically wearing the jacket, they've still managed to incorporate things enough there to read like a Ninja Turtle. Like, for example, Raphael's got the little elbow pads here on the side. He still has his knee pads, which is funny that they put it over top of his legs, over top of his pants. And again, like the little touches of detail, those little stitched in sections of his pants, boy, those go a long way. They've given him also as well platform boots, which is something you would expect to see with Frankenstein's monster. I'm glad to see that they incorporated that. Figure does technically have peg holes on the undersides of his feet, but by the nature of his boxy shoebox style shoes that he wears, I mean, they're pretty flat anyways. So even though the figure is quite top heavy, the flat feet certainly do come in handy to make the figure quite stable when you're standing it on a shelf. As for the posability on Raphael as Frankenstein's monster, first of all, we'll start with his head. The head does rotate back and forth. The thing you will want to be careful of is that you don't pull this along the ways and accidentally rip it out from his neck. He does have a ball joint that allows the head to go up, go down, and also you can rock it back and forth nicely. I kind of like just having it slightly off to the side like this. In addition to that, slightly further down, Raphael does also have a ball joint at the base of his neck. The neck base, though, is a little harder to turn, but there definitely seems to be a ball joint working behind the scenes there. The arms do come out. I wouldn't necessarily say they come out comfortably at 90 degrees, just a little less than that, maybe about 45 or so. The arms, however, though, do rotate all the way around, and you'll be happy to know as well, like this top jacket that they've given Raphael is a softer rubbery material. Also a little readout dial there as well. Very, very cool. Like, I love the idea that they've gone in there and discolored it like this to make it look like he's got really old tools on it. He's probably just also been sitting in a lab abandoned somewhere as well until found later on. Arms, yeah, rotate all the way around. The figure does have a swivel at his elbow, just in case, yeah, he does have a double hinge, just in case you're curious, just underneath the elbow pad, a single hinge and a double hinge. It still only pulls off successfully about 45, but at least it still has a double hinge on the elbow. Figure also has a swivel in the hands that rotate all the way around. Hinging those, of course, back and forth. Figure also has an upper torso ball joint. That's always nice to see. He also possesses a leg splits to only getting about that for splits, although you're probably not going to be wanting to display the figure like this anyways. Legs go easily forward and also equally easily back. He has a swivel at the top of the thigh. Double hinge once again on the knee. And when it comes to Raphael's ankle articulation, you can only get, well, you can go further down. Obviously, you can't go any further than that point, but that's really not any, you're really not going to have it any further past that point anyways. And the figure, yes, has ankle articulation as well. Such a cool looking figure. The neat thing again about the Raphael, though, is he's first of all bigger. And that's really, I feel like, the way that the figure should have been in the first place. If you really are going to be making yourself a monster Ninja Turtle, let's just slide him over just a little bit in the middle. And again, I know it's not necessarily Raphael, but there's next to Michelangelo. Making him bigger like this works so much better. It really conveys, again, the idea that these guys are monsters after all. And again, speaking of monsters, anytime I find the chance to bring in Frankenstein's monster, another great looking figure that NECA Toys had also produced, I mean, it works really well to have all three of them together. You probably, for your own purpose of displaying them, may want to have Raphael displayed with more Raphael figure, or you might even just do away with the idea of displaying them along with the Ninja Turtles, and instead sort of move the turtle monsters over more to the territory of the Universal Monster figures that NECA Toys have very successfully been producing. Raphael as Frankenstein's monster is an absolute treat for both fans of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle line and for fans of the Universal Monster line, both of which NECA has been doing very successfully for so long. Initially, I was a bit confused why NECA chose Raphael to be Frankenstein's monster and not the obvious one of Donatello. Because after all, you think Frankenstein's monster, you think, right, lab table, electricity, you think science. All of that points to the direction of Donatello. And then I thought of it longer, though. Donatello is also the turtle that's known for inventing. So it really doesn't make any sense for him to be the monster. It makes more sense for him to be Victor Frankenstein. And then, of course, you're going to be taking the more muscular brooding of the turtle brothers, Raphael. He really works the best, I think, as Frankenstein's monster. And I can understand why NECA chose him and not Donatello. Advertised, though, on the side of the box, you may already see this for yourself, just below Raph as Frankie, you may also see there's Leonardo as Quasimodo, and just below that, a decayed turtle. It looks like Michelangelo being a mummy, as I can certainly see some bandages down below. And just below that, slightly teased as a silhouette with a very familiar hairstyle and a streak down the side, that's likely going to be April O'Neil as Bride of Frankenstein, a perfect fit to pair her along with Bride of Frankenstein. I hope, though, we are also going to be getting, of course, the Donatello. I would imagine Donatello would probably make the most sense as, like, the Invisible Man. Because, again, you're thinking science, Invisible Man. I think Donatello works probably the best. You probably could have also done him as the werewolf, because, again, it's experimenting. You could also have done him as Jekyll and Hyde. The point is there is a lot of Universal monster characters to choose from. I hope they do just more than just the four Turtle Brothers and April O'Neil. I think there's definitely potential to do something with Shredder, something to do with Splinter. Maybe you can even do Splinter as werewolf, as a Wolfman. Although he's already hairy anyways, it probably doesn't make any sense. Probably would choose somebody else for the Wolfman. A big thank you, though, to the folks over at NECA Toys that did provide this sample of Raphael as the Frankensteins monster. I have been such a big fan of both the TMNT stuff that NECA has been doing, and I've also been a big fan of stuff that they've now started to do with the Universal monsters, with both Frankenstein's monster, the Mummy, and, of course, the Wolfman. I think it's just a happy marriage of having those two properties coming together, giving us a pretty cool new toy line. What do you guys think, though, of Frankenstein's monster played by Raphael? As you can see, he's currently holding only one of his sai, with the other one slid into that open loop section on his belt. Now, again, you can either slide that there. That's really where NECA has you planned to put it. Or you can also just sit it inside of the chains, where it's not as snug in quarters. But really loving the look of Raphael. Looking forward to certainly seeing the other ones in hand. And hoping, again, that they expand outside of just the four Turtle Brothers and April O'Neil. If you guys are certainly new to this channel, you're enjoying the content that you're seeing, make sure, first of all, that you're hitting that subscribe button down below. Second of all, that you turn on the bell notification. Third of all, making sure that you're coming back on a regular basis. While we have wrapped up the review here of Rafi as Frankie, there will be more NECA reviews coming your way in the not-so-distant future. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.